Welcome to CMMC Unlocked. I'm Eric Marquette, here with Paul Natopsky and Roz the Rulemaker. Today's a bit of a bridge episode, because we're talking about something that sounds consumer-focused on the surface, the FCC's U.S. Cyber Trust Mark for smart devices. But if you work in compliance, defense, or cyber leadership, stick with us, because this gets at a bigger issue: how trust gets communicated in the market.
That's exactly right. The FCC established a voluntary cybersecurity labeling program for Internet of Things devices, consumer IoT specifically. The source documents describe it as focused on Internet connected, radio frequency emitting products. So think wireless smart home devices, not every connected thing under the sun. The concept is simple. A product that meets the program requirements can display the US Cyber Trust Mark, and the label is paired with a QR code or URL that links to more detailed security information.
And from the rulemaking side, that detail matters. This was not just a logo exercise. The FCC proposed the program in 2023, then moved it into a formal framework, and the effective date for a set of the rules was announced for September 9, 2024, after the required Paperwork Reduction Act review and OMB approval. So when we talk about the trust mark, we're talking about a real regulatory program structure, even though participation is voluntary.
Right. And the why here is pretty intuitive. Smart devices make life easier. Cameras, thermostats, doorbells, watches, appliances, but they also create risk in really ordinary homes. Privacy risk, because these devices collect data. Safety risk, because they interact with physical environments. And network risk, because one weak device can become a foothold into the rest of the home network.
And that risk is not theoretical. The FCC materials point to widespread IoT attacks and long standing weaknesses like poor passwords, weak security configurations, and inadequate update practices. The proposed rulemaking even references the Mirai botnet as a real example of how insecure connected devices can be weaponized. In operational terms, one insecure device can become a surveillance problem, a disruption problem, or a platform for broader compromise.
Yeah, and consumers generally are not reading firmware release notes before they buy a smart light bulb. They're glancing at the listing, maybe the star ratings, maybe the price. So the trust mark is trying to answer a basic question at the point of sale. Does this thing meet a baseline of cybersecurity expectations?
That's the bridge to our usual CMMC world. A label like this is a trust signal. It translates underlying requirements, assessments, and disclosures into something visible to a non-expert buyer. In other words, it is not cybersecurity by itself. It is an indicator that a process exists underneath it. Criteria, conformity assessment, oversight, and disclosures.
And that distinction is important. In security, a signal is only useful if it maps to documented controls and a credible validation process. Otherwise, it's branding. The QR code concept is actually one of the stronger aspects here because it acknowledges that a simple logo cannot carry the full burden of technical meaning. The buyer facing mark says, in effect, start here. The linked disclosure says, here's the deeper information.
So for defense contractors listening, we're not saying a smart toaster label equals CMMC. Obviously not. What we are saying is that this is a live example of how regulators and industry are trying to make security legible, visible, understandable, comparable. And that's a challenge all of us deal with, whether we're talking about a consumer shopping on Amazon or a prime contractor evaluating supplier risk. The obvious comparison, and the FCC makes it too, is Energy Star. People know that label. They may not know every technical standard behind it, but they recognize it as a shorthand for something useful.
Exactly. Energy Star is a mature example of a technical regime translated into a simple consumer-facing symbol, and the research on the Cyber Trust Mark leaned on that comparison in a really interesting way. Participants were much more familiar with Energy Star, trusted it more, and reported that it influenced purchasing. By contrast, the Cyber Trust Mark was relatively unfamiliar, which limited its immediate impact.
That result should not surprise anyone in security. Familiarity drives behavior. A label can only influence decisions if buyers recognize it, understand it, and believe it corresponds to real value. The Kai study found that the presence of a cybersecurity label did not significantly alter consumer selections overall. That's the headline. But there was a more nuanced finding. Security aware participants were significantly more likely to choose labeled products and were willing to pay more, about 16.5% more in that study.
Which is fascinating because it suggests the first audience for something like this may not be everybody. It may be the people already primed to care.
Correct. Early adoption may come from consumers who already think in terms of updates, passwords, device support windows, and disclosure transparency. For that group, the label can reduce friction. It can help them identify products that at least signal alignment with a baseline.
And there are practical benefits if the program works as intended. It can improve consumer awareness, it can pressure manufacturers to build security into product development rather than treat it as an afterthought. And the QR-based disclosure model can surface information consumers rarely get clearly today. How long a device will be supported, whether software updates are part of the security posture, whether default credential practices are more responsible, that sort of thing.
But we should stay balanced here, because there are real limitations. First, it's voluntary. So not every manufacturer participates, and absence of the mark doesn't automatically mean a product is insecure. It might just mean the vendor didn't join.
Second, misunderstanding is a genuine issue. In the study, many participants associated the label with trustworthiness or conformance, but a lot of them misunderstood what it actually implied. Only a very small share explicitly said the trust mark influenced their choice. That's a warning sign for anyone who thinks a symbol alone will solve a market education problem.
And third, labels can oversimplify security. Security is not static, it is not binary. A label can indicate that a product met criteria within a program, but it cannot guarantee freedom from future vulnerabilities, perfect privacy, or safe operation in every environment. That's not a flaw unique to this program. That's just the reality of cybersecurity.
I think that's the key tension. You need simplification to make buying decisions possible, but too much simplification creates false confidence. That's a tough line to walk.
It is. And the study also suggests design matters. Simpler labels and QR code based approaches were viewed more favorably by security aware users. So, if the government and industry want this to work, education and usability are not side issues. They are central to whether the trust signal means anything in practice.
Let's make this real. One reason this matters is that home networks are full of connected devices people forget about. Routers are the classic example. And when they age out, they don't just become old tech, they can become active risk.
That's a good example. In May 2025, the FBI warned that certain end of life routers were being compromised using the Moon malware botnet. The advisory named 13 models and recommended replacement, especially for devices that no longer receive support. It also advised users to disable remote management, save the change, and reboot. That's a very practical lesson. Unsupported connected devices remain exposed, and attackers know it.
And that's not just a router story. It applies to cameras, baby monitors, smart speakers, watches, dishwashers, honestly, anything internet connected in the house. Consumers deserve clearer signals about whether a product is being maintained and whether security was built in at all.
Which brings us back to CMMC. Different domain, same governance principle. A trust signal only works when the underlying process is credible. In the FCC program, that means defined criteria, conformity assessment, oversight, and disclosure. In CMMC, it means documented practices, evidence, assessment rigor, and ongoing compliance. The symbol, certificate, or status is the visible tip of a much larger structure.
Yes, and I would go a step further. In both cases, trust is not a one time event. If you earn a label or pass an assessment and then stop maintaining the controls, the trust signal becomes stale. Security requires lifecycle discipline, updates, configuration management, documentation, monitoring, and accountability. That's as true for a consumer IoT device as it is for an environment handling controlled defense information.
So if you're a defense contractor listening, maybe the takeaway is not, hey, I should care about smart refrigerators. It's that markets and regulators are converging on the same reality. Buyers want proof, not promises.
Precisely, and transparency is part of that proof. The QR code idea is useful because it acknowledges that claims should be inspectable. In the compliance world, we might call that evidence. In the consumer world, we might call it understandable disclosure. Different language, same idea.
Balanced conclusion. The U.S. Cyber Trust Mark is a constructive step, particularly as a baseline signal for consumer IoT. It may help create demand for better security, especially among security-aware buyers. But it is not magic, and it should not be treated as a substitute for informed evaluation, technical diligence, or ongoing maintenance.
Well said. Whether you're buying a baby monitor for your home or protecting defense information in a contractor environment, trust has to be earned through demonstrable controls, not marketing claims, not vague assurances, and not a logo standing alone.
That's a good place to leave it. We'll keep watching how these public trust frameworks evolve because they have a lot to teach the compliance world.
Agreed. Eric, Roz, good discussion.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Roz. And thanks to all of you for listening to CMMC Unlocked. We'll see you next time.
Take care, everyone.
Goodbye.